Okay, in this series of videos we're going to be looking at a way of doing a little bit of revision using some of the published papers. Now this particular paper that we're going to use is the sample paper for higher tier, and if you follow the link below in the description you'll be able to download this paper. And the whole idea is we're going to go through the first maybe 10 questions or so. I'm going to aim for this video to be about 20 minutes to half an hour. And if you stop the video, have a go at the questions yourself before you have a look at the solutions, then I'm hopeful this will give you about an hour's worth of focused revision. Okay, so let's have a look then at the first question on this particular paper. Okay, and it's asking us to work out 6.4 times 5.2. The main thing with this is the mistake to make is that when you're actually multiplying, you really don't want to include the decimals. What you want to do is to actually multiply 634 times 52. Now there will be ways in which you might do this. You might partition it, you might use some sort of different way of doing it. I tend to use this particular way, and it kind of works for me. It's something that I've done for a long time, and all I'm doing here is working through. So I've got then something like that. So this is all my digits multiplied, and I've got 32968. Okay, now because the decimal point has actually been moved 3 places in total, as 1 place it's been moved here and 2 places it's been moved here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to move my decimal point 3 places in the answer. So at the moment it's here. I'm going to move it once, twice, 3 times. So the answer is going to be 32.968. Okay, I hope that's been all right for you and you've been able to work that through. As I say, there might be a few different methods that you might use, and that's perfectly fine, not a problem at all. Okay, so on to question 2. And this one is, again, a relatively straightforward expansion and simplification of a particular expression. So what I'm going to do, and again, there's a couple of different ways of doing this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply m times m, which is m squared. M times plus 3 is plus 3m, plus 7m, and then 7 times 3 is going to be plus 21. Okay, so if I tie that up, which is what they mean by simplify, I'm just going to tidy up these terms in the middle here, and I will write that out as m squared plus 10m plus 21. Okay, I hope that's okay for you for the first 2 questions. So let's now work through the next question, which is question 3. Please do stop the video at this point, at the beginning of each question, and have a go at them for yourself. And you should be able to see how you're looking in terms of how you're working through these questions and whether they match up with the solutions. All right, now these type of questions that we've got here are, I think, a little bit confusing. It's quite difficult to kind of see what's going on, but essentially the information we're given is that this is 38 degrees and this is 38 degrees. They're asking us to work out this, and there's a few bits and bobs here, but if I just what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover that top bit there, and hopefully you'll see that what we've actually got is 2 parallel lines with a line that goes across. So essentially, I don't know if you can see this too well on the video, but essentially you've got this kind of Z shape. Okay, now if you've got that Z shape in there, it means if this is 38 degrees, this is also 38 degrees. And the same holds for the top. So if I just cover that at the top here, I've got, maybe a little bit easier to see on the video, I've got 38 degrees here coming down, and I've got a Z shape here, so this is also 38 degrees. Okay, so what it means then is that we've got this situation where actually we've got 2 isosceles triangles where they're both exactly the same because of these two lines. So if I just sort of wrote that to one side, what I've got with this one here is something like that, and that side and that side is exactly the same, and that's 38 degrees, which also means that this must be 38 degrees as well. So this would be 38 degrees in here. So I've got two lots of 38 degrees. If I add those two together, I've got 76. And as you know, with a triangle, if I take all the internal angles add up to 180 degrees, so I take away the 76, which is the total of this plus this, then it means that this top angle must be 104 degrees. This is 104 degrees, and actually the same holds true for the top here. Okay, as you might also be aware, angles around a central point here, or degrees in a circle, are going to be 360. So I've got here 208. So the angle X is going to be 360 take away 208, and if I just work that out, that's going to give me 152 degrees. Okay, so angle X is going to be 152 degrees. Okay, I hope you followed that all right. It does take a little bit of thinking through, but basically try not to get too confused with these sorts of questions. They tend to make them much more difficult by adding lots and lots of lines in there. But essentially you're looking for parallel lines and maybe Z angles, or sometimes F angles. If you have a look at some of the other posts within this particular channel, you should be able to have a look at alternate angles and have a look at some of those solutions. Okay, so we're going to go on to question 4, and that question deals with driving a distance from London to Sheffield. Now, interestingly, these sorts of word problems, the important thing is that you do take it a bit at a time. So the idea with it is if you have a look at this question, then the first bit of information is that Gary drove from London to Sheffield, and it took him 3 hours at an average speed of 80 kilometres per hour. So don't worry too much about everything else. If we just concentrate on that for a minute, let's have a look at Gary's journey. Well, okay, as you know, speed equals distance divided by time. Okay, now I'm not worried about anything else to do with the rest of the question. I'm only interested at this moment in time on Gary's work, okay, Gary's distance and speed and time. Okay, so if we have a look at that, Gary drove at an average speed of 80 kilometres per hour, and it took him 3 hours. So if it took him 3 hours, it meant that it would be 80, a distance we don't know, but we do know his time was 3 hours. And if we cross multiply, it then means that Gary must have driven a distance of 240 kilometres. Okay, and that's Gary's distance, which I'm assuming is the distance from London to Sheffield. Okay, so without looking at the rest of the question, we've already taken out a little bit of information from that. So the next little bit is that Lynn also drove the same distance. In other words, she drove also from London to Sheffield. So here's Lynn's journey. Okay, and now at this point in time, I still haven't read the rest of the question. I'm only interested in looking at the question as it's developing and trying to tease out a bit of information from each of the sentences that there are here. So speed equals distance over time. Okay. All right, so we know now that Lynn drove a distance of 240 kilometres, which is also the distance from London to Sheffield, and it took her a time of 5 hours. So from that, we can work out actually her speed, and I'm assuming that that's going to be part of this particular question. Well, I think it is, But if we have a look at that, 240 divided by 5 is exactly the same as saying 480. All I've done is doubled it, divided by 10. So that's going to give us 48 kilometres per hour, which is Lynn's speed, and that would answer that particular question. And then there is also a supplementary question at the bottom here where they've said, if Lynn did not drive along the same roads as Gary, explain how that affects your answer to part A. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure how to answer that really. I would say probably that the distance could change. Okay, it might be a shorter distance or a longer distance, so the distance could change. Okay, because she's driving a different route. Okay, that's fine. So a longer distance would mean a longer time. Okay, and a shorter distance would mean a shorter time. Okay. All right. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to have a look at the marking scheme as to what they actually want for that, but I would imagine if you wrote something like that, then you'd be absolutely fine, and that would give them all the information that they needed. Okay, so let's have a look at question 5. We're going to move on to question 5 now, and this talks about in a company the ratio of the number of men to the number of women is 3:2. So let's just have a look at that. And again, as we did before with the previous question, what I do is I look at the first bit. I'm not really going to trouble myself. I'm not going to worry myself about the rest of the question for the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tease out a bit of information from that first bit. And what I'm going to say is that men to women is the ratio 3:2. So if there were 5 people in the company, then it means 2 of them would be women and 3 of them would be men. Okay, well, that's fine, but I've noticed in the next bit of the question it's talking about percentages. Well, as you're aware, percentages means out of 100. So actually, I'm just going to be a little bit sneaky here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this out by 20 and make it 100 people. And I just suspect if I do that, it's going to make my life a little bit easier. So if I've multiplied this by 20, I need to multiply each of these by 20, which means that 2 times 20 is going to be 40 women, and 3 times 20 is going to be 60 men. Okay, so I'm just kind of guessing that that's going to make my life a little bit easier when I come to actually working out the question. So let's have a look at the next bit then. So 40% of the men are under the age of 25. Okay, well, I'm going to just stick with my instincts really and have a look at this, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to work out 40% of 60. Well, if I work out 40% of 60, that's the same as saying 10% of 60, which is 6, multiplied by 4, so that's going to give me 24 men. Okay. With women, it says 10% of the women are under the age of 25. Okay, well, 10% of 40, so 10% of 40, and that equals 4. So what we've got there is a total of 24 plus 4. Now, the best thing about this is it says what percentage of all the people in the company are under the age of 25. Well, because I've worked this out as out of 100, it means I can write this as that is the men under 25 and that is the women under 25. So that's going to give me 28 out of 100 people are under the age of 25 in the company. Well, 28 out of 100 is exactly the same as writing 28%. Okay, and that's actually the answer to this particular question. Okay, so sometimes it will be better for you maybe just have a look at the first part of the question, see if you can do something with it, try to make your working just a little bit easier to suit yourself. Okay, I hope that's been okay for you, and let's move on to question 6. So in question 6, we're going to be looking at one of these drawings where we need to have a 3D drawing. Now these are, I think, quite difficult. You either can kind of work this through yourself or you find it really hard to do. Now it is a 2-mark question, so best advice is don't spend too long on these sorts of questions. If you don't get it, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, but it's something that would be worthwhile practicing because they do come up fairly frequently in a lot of the question papers that I've come across, and there will be other questions in a very similar vein. What it asks you to do is, in the space below, draw a sketch of the solid prism. Write the dimensions of the prism on your sketch. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw it, and I'll see if I can put that on the video so you can see it properly. Okay, so the way I would look at it is that I have, this is my front elevation, so let's just concentrate on that shape for the moment. So I'm going to just duplicate that shape because it's the bit that I actually see. So if I draw this like this, okay, and that's the bit that I see. Okay, and then we need to look at how this bit looks from the very side. So if you can imagine, what I'm doing is I'm looking at it from this point along here. Okay, well, it's going to look like that. So you've got to be a bit careful here to make sure that you keep all the lines as parallel as you possibly can. So can you see here that this line is parallel to this line? In the same way, and this is actually, these 3 lines here are representative of these lines here. Okay, so you can see that what we've got is lines which are parallel to each other, the same lines which are parallel along here. Okay, so if I then draw the top, which is the plan view, what I'm doing is I'm looking down on it, and what I can see is something like that. I've not drawn this particularly well, I've not given myself much space, but hopefully you can see there that I've got this not very good but sort of step-like structure. I think that's just a little bit off there. It probably should go a little bit more like that. Oh dear me. That's not very tidy really, is it? Okay, so let's just put in some dimensions. That's going to be 4, that's going to be 5, that's going to be 3, and all I'm doing is I'm taking each of these from the plan and the centimetre grid above. Okay, that's really not a very good picture, but hopefully you get the idea. All right, well, that's taken us up to about 20 minutes. I think what we'll do is we'll carry on just with another couple of questions, maybe the next question, see how far we get with that question, and then we'll take a break. But hopefully you've been working through this on in a fairly steady way, and the solutions that you're working are matching up with the kind of solutions that we're working out here. All right, so the next one deals with sampling. Now, in times past, they would have called this stratified sampling, and sometimes you'll see questions that talk about stratified sampling. All right, all we're basically doing is we've got 1,200 students in a school. Okay, well, Kate's going to take a sample of the 60 students at the school because she's not going to talk to all 1,200. She's just going to talk to 60 of them. And when she talked to 60 of them, 20 of them said they wanted ham, 15 said salami, 8 said vegetarian, 17 said margarita. So I'm just going to check if I add those up, that's actually 60 students. And then what they want us to do is to work out how much ham pizza, so ham pizza, Kate should order. Well, we're saying that 20 out of the 60 students, so 20 out of the 60 students wanted ham, okay? And that's the fraction of the 1,200 students in the school. So basically this question boils down to that. Now you might work it out slightly differently from me. All I would do is I would reduce the fraction, so I'll make that 2 out of 6, and then I can see here this 6 will divide into this 1,200, so I can make that 1 at the bottom and divide that, and that becomes 200. So 2 times 200 is going to be 400. So in other words, in this particular situation, Kate should order 400 ham pizzas. Okay. All right. Now it has asked us to write down any assumptions you make and explain how this could affect your answer. So there's a couple of different ways you could answer this. It assumes that all students want a whole pizza. Not everybody might want a whole pizza, so that could be one of the assumptions that you could write in here. I think another assumption is that every single student in the school would like a pizza. Okay, so it's assuming that all students would like a whole pizza. Or rather would like a pizza, and of course then it might be that not every student likes all of those flavours, so it might be there's other flavours that Kate might need to order. Okay, so there's a couple of different assumptions you can make in there, and I would imagine if you wrote a few things down like that, then you should be absolutely fine for making full marks on that particular question. Okay, so I think we'll go on to question 8. I'm very aware of the time on the video here. We're up to about 20 minutes. But I think if we work through question 8 and then we'll take a break after question 8, and hopefully that'll give you the opportunity then to try and make sure that all of your working is fine and that you're keeping up to speed with all of the questions in here. Okay, so here is a parallelogram. Work out the value of x and the value of y. Well, in a parallelogram, opposite angles are equal to each other. So just be a little bit careful about this, that what we're saying is 5x minus 20 equals 2x plus 43. Just be careful because you've got an unknown in there, so don't involve this particular angle for the moment. So let's work that out. So I've got 5x minus 20 equals 2x plus 43, and then really it's just a case of manipulating this to get x's onto one side and numbers on the other. So I'm going to take that 2x and I'm going to pull it over here, and that's going to mean I'm going to take 2x away, so that's going to become 3x. So I've then got minus 20, I don't want it there, I'm going to add it to that side, so 3x is going to equal, what's that going to be? That's going to be 63. So 43 add 20 is 63. Well, if I divide that through by 3, I've got x equals 21. So in this particular case, x equals 21. All right, so the next little bit is this unknown here. Well, these two angles will add up in a parallelogram to 180 degrees. So I could say, if I wanted, that 5x minus 20 plus 4y minus 5x equals 180 degrees. Now, you could, if you wanted, just plug in the values of x. Okay, however, I have noticed that I can actually make this a little bit easier for myself because I've got 5x, a positive value of 5x, and a negative value of 5x. So actually, they've been very kind to us, and we can actually lose those. So we don't even need to bother with the values of x for this, because I've then got minus 20 plus 4y equals 180. Well, if I add that minus 20 to both sides, I'm going to end up with 4y equals 200. And then I divide through by 4, and I get y equals 50. Okay, so y equals 50 and x equals 21 for this particular question. Okay, well that's taken us up to about 24-25 minutes, so I think we'll stop at that particular point. Hopefully if you are working through this particular paper, this will give you a good opportunity to stop, check your working, and you've been able to match your solutions with the kind of solutions that are coming here. There will be the rest of this particular paper in the playlist, but please do have a look at other questions. If you're not sure about anything that I've talked through, then please add a comment below. I'll always come back to you. Have a look at the rest of the playlist, sign up for the channel, subscribe to the channel, and I'll look forward to seeing you inside the next video.